talking Star Wars novels. We are. Hello, my fellow page turners, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Matthew, the man with a hat who reads. And today, let's talk about Star Wars novels, especially the expanded universe novels. Now, the big thing with the expanded universe novels is they kind of got their big start when Timothy Zahn published his Thrawn Trilogy in the early 90s, I believe it was. They were kind of looked at as a continuation of the Star Wars saga set about 5 years after, at the time, Return of the Jedi, the last movie. And it became a huge publishing boom. The expanded universe grew to encompass probably close to 60 novels at its peak, stretching as far back as a couple 10,000 years before A New Hope, all the way up to about 45 years after A New Hope. And as the stories progressed, we were introduced to new characters, descendants of old familiar characters, and we said goodbye to a bunch of the classic characters along the way. This was a huge thing. I was a huge expanded universe fan. I bought a lot of the novels. I've read a lot of the novels. But then Disney came along and bought Star Wars, and all that stuff became no longer considered canon, which is sad when you figure that there was so many of them. And some of them I understand because there are some that aren't very good. I could do a video of a bunch of bad ones if I really wanted to. If you want that, let me know. I can maybe plan one yet for the end of the month. If that's what you want. If you want me to do a video about the bad ones that I've read. But I thought it'd be kind of fun just to showcase my top 10 favorites of the expanded universe novels that I've read. So some side notes on that. I haven't read anything past the new Jedi Order series. That was like 21 books. And its ending wrapped up so many different story threads, and I never went any farther than that. I know there was at least, probably another 20 books after that at least. But I always looked at that as a good ending point, because at the time when I was collecting them, it looked like there was no end in sight, and they were just going to continue writing books onward and onward. And since Disney bought it, they've been writing new books. I haven't read any of those either, since those are the canon books. These are the expanded universe ones, the ones that are no longer canon. And my logic on some of these might be flawed, but that's okay. This is my opinion, and if I can bring attention to some of these for people, great. I will say there are at least 4, I believe, in my list here. 1, 2, 3... There are 4 of these that are part of the new Jedi Order series. Now, you kind of want to read those in order. Don't be jumping around. I mean, I know they're split into trilogies and duologies, and there's a bunch of individual novels, and you can kind of jump in wherever, but it is best just to read them in order to get the whole experience. And yes, I know it's a lot of books. But we'll start off with number 10. This is New Jedi Order, Destiny's Way. Now, a lot of people don't talk about this book, and the thing I love the most about this book is there's a lot of discussions with Luke and a fallen Jedi who's been gone for, 40 years, I think, at the point of this. She's been gone, and there's a lot of conversations of them just kind of talking about the Force and what is the light side, what is the dark side, where's that line. There's a lot of dialogue like that, and I loved whenever we got to it. It's like this philosophical reasoning of the Force, and I thought that's something you don't usually see in the Star Wars novels, and I really kind of enjoyed that. Number 9, this is a fun one. If you want as fun, this is Death Troopers by Joe Schreiber, and oh my god. So the best way to sum this one up is that this is a Star Wars zombie novel. I mean, look at the cover. This is just, it's ridiculously goofy. It's not very long, but if you ever wanted a horror Star Wars novel, this is the one for you. Han and Chewie show up, so you do have some familiar characters involved with this, but it's goofy. I love this. It's been a while since I've read it. I would love to squeeze this one in again. It's not, like I said, it's not very long. It's not even 300 pages. And it is just as crazy as you'd expect. It's gory. It's spooky, scary with zombies. I mean, it's just a fun Star Wars novel. If you're looking for a Star Wars horror novel, that's the way to go. Joe Schreiber wrote 3 of those that were kind of more horror novels. Matter of fact, I have another one of them coming up in here. So, number 8 is one I just finished, and that is Luke Skywalker and the Shadows of Mindor. Now, this one, I loved what they did with this because it kind of starts with Luke asking this guy to investigate war crimes centered on Luke that he did when he was on Mindor. Some people that were killed. And he wants to know he should be held responsible and held guilty for that. And that is another thing that a lot of these Star Wars novels of its era in the timeline, you don't hear a lot of like Luke questioning things or the characters questioning their guilt in certain things. So that was really refreshing. And this was by Matthew Stover, who hasn't wrote a lot of Star Wars novels, but he always really pulls the emotional core to these characters, which is amazing. Because some of these, the characters are literally just caricatures, and he really understands how to get into the character's psyche and really make you feel for the characters and show that the characters are actually human. Okay. Number 7. This is the first book in the New Jedi Order series. This is R.A. Salvatore's Vector Prime. Now, as a whole, this isn't it's a decent Star Wars novel. It's not my favorite Star Wars novel. And as a matter of fact, I would actually probably put a couple, as I already talked about, higher than this one. But this one is very important to Star Wars Expanded Universe storylines because this book showed us that the major classic characters we'd followed for prior to this, like 15, 20 books at least, that they were not immortal. This actually was the first time we've seen like a major character from the original series die. And I would say it because I think it's been spoiled. If you've read any of the Star Wars Expanded Universe novels, it's been spoiled for you already. But I'm not going to do it here in case you haven't. But it was a really it comes out of nowhere. You don't expect it. Because if you'd read, prior to this, people who were reading all the Star Wars novels were like, oh, they're not going to ever kill any of the main characters. So it's just getting boring, repetitive. And they do that here. And you will shed tears. I know a lot of people shed tears when it happens. But number 6. Right? Yeah, number 6. This is Joe Schreiber's Maul Lockdown. Now, the reason I love this novel is, once again, Joe Schreiber, it does have some horror elements, but not as much as Death Troopers. But this one, we all loved Darth Maul. And at the time, we thought, oh, he dies in episode 1, that's it. And then they had a couple other novels with him, but this one I really enjoyed. He ends up in this space penitentiary because he's supposed to find... That's me. Capture the ultimate weapon that will enable his Sith masters to conquer the galaxy, but standing in the way are a bloodthirsty prison warden, a cannibal gang, cutthroat crime lord, Jabba the Hutt, and an unspeakable alien horror. I mean, it's Darth Maul doing Darth Maul things, and it's great. It's just a blast. And nobody ever talks about that one. Nobody talks about Joe Schreiber's Star Wars novels enough, and he didn't write very many, unfortunately, because this was actually the last one to go to mass market paperback before everything was thrown out by Disney. Matter of fact, it even has Disney's logo on the back. And it has that lovely Legends bar they put on all the reprints. So, yeah, I'm not bitter at all. I'm sorry. Disney ruined Star Wars for a good chunk of it. The sequel trilogy started out promising, and it just progressively showed they had no clear plan going ahead with that. So, number 5 is the conclusion of the New Jedi Order series. This is the Unifying Force, and I loved this one because it did wrap up it wrapped up a 21 book series, for crying out loud. And there's a lot of different characters we got introduced to in this series that we get to see like nice endings for all of them, for the most part. There's just a lot going on. It's actually feels like it's officially wrapping up a huge chunk of the Star Wars lore up to that point. The New Jedi Order series is often kind of looked at as like the passing of the torch from the classic characters of Luke, Han, Leia, to the next generation of characters, their children. And this book just feels like a nice wrap up of everything. And if they would have stopped here, I think everybody would have been fine with it. I don't think they would have been too disappointed by it, because it really was a nice ending to the series. Number 4 is Timothy Zahn's Scoundrels. Now, the reason I liked this one and put it up here on the list as high as I did is because I wanted more adventures with Han, Chewie, and Lando. And we got that with this book. This is set, was it after A New Hope or before A New Hope? I can't remember. Oh, yes, they always have this very handy timeline in the front. That's very helpful if you want to read them in like chronological order or whatever. This is set after A New Hope. And I was like, okay, I want adventures with these guys. And it was nice to see some adventures with these guys. So it's just, it really was a fun like heist novel. If you wanted a Star Wars heist novel, it's a really fun novel for that. And I mean, look at the cover. It's just a fun cover. It's an eye-catching cover. And Timothy Zahn is one of the Star Wars gods, as far as I'm concerned. Him and James Luceno, who wrote Unifying Force. I realized I didn't mention that. But they are both, as far as I can say, they have not written a bad Star Wars novel. And I'm glad that they did bring them back in on some of the canon novels now, even though I haven't read any of them. Number 3, the last entry from this series, I promise, but this is the New Jedi Order Traitor by Matthew Stover. Now, again, Matthew Stover has a really good way of getting into the emotional depth of the characters, and this book is also one of the darkest books in the New Jedi Order series. There's only like Star by Star is the only other one that I would say is as dark as this one. This one, our main character of Jason Solo is literally being tortured and being trained about how far you can push the Force. And this book, at the time, you didn't realize it. It does set up a lot of the stuff that happens in the books after New Jedi Order. You just don't even realize it's setting that stuff up. It is a very dark chapter in the series. It's probably, like I said, it probably is the darkest, and it's just really well written. It's not very long. It's one of the I think it is the shortest of the New Jedi Order novels, actually. It's not even 300 pages. If it's not the shortest, it's close to being the shortest, and it is just phenomenal. It's my favorite of the series, and I know other people have said that too, but it is just a really great novel in the series. Very depressing and very dark. For number 2, I actually have the whole trilogy here because that is one whole story, but this is Timothy Zahn's Thrawn Trilogy. You got Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command. This series is probably the most important series to the expanded universe because this was literally where they started building it from. They continued on with the stories of the characters. It's 5 years after Return of the Jedi. Han and Leia are married. Leia is pregnant with the twins, Jason and Jaina. We meet Admiral Thrawn, who becomes probably one of the best villains we got after the movies. We also meet Mara Jade, who becomes Luke's wife eventually. I mean, we meet a lot of great characters in this trilogy. It is by far one of my favorite trilogies of all time, not just in the Star Wars Expanded Universe stuff. And they are so well done. He is such a great, he's such a great writer. He writes these Star Wars novels so well. And it is just fantastic. And if you have never read any of the Expanded Universe, but you want to try it, start with the Thrawn Trilogy. That's where you need to start because those are probably some of the best ones. And I just said that, and I have one more for number 1. This book, I remember I picked this up after I'd gotten a lot of these other ones. And I didn't think I would like this because a lot of the prequel era novels I've not been a huge fan of. And that's why there was really none of those in this list except this one. And this I've talked about a little bit on other... I think I mentioned it in a comment to somebody. This is Star Wars Darth Plagueis. Now, this book is by James Luceno, and it does not get the buzz it deserves. This is one that should have stayed canon because this is just fantastic. We have Darth Plagueis. We have him training Palpatine and the Sith tradition of two at one time, a master and apprentice. So we see Palpatine. Then we see Palpatine getting an apprentice with Maul. And then we see him, of course, dragging Count Dooku to the dark side. I mean, there's a lot going on in this novel. It covers a huge amount of time. I mean, it's covering from before Phantom Menace all the way up to essentially... Does it go all the way up to the beginning of Revenge of the Sith? I think it goes up practically... It goes up at least to Attack of the Clones because... So, I mean, it covers quite a bit of ground, but it... And it's great. It's great backstory into the Sith. You get to see the dark side in action. You get to see these characters that you hear about. And, I mean, they mention about Plagueis in Revenge of the Sith. And it's just... It is my favorite Star Wars novel. And if you're a fan of the movies and you want a book that kind of fills in some backstory in the prequel era, this is the way to go because this is just fantastic. So that's my list of my top 10 Star Wars Expanded Universe novels. This video went longer than I expected, so if you watched to the end, thank you. What are your guys' thoughts? Have you read any of these novels I shared here? Have you read any of the Star Wars Expanded Universe novels, or have you just read some of the canon stuff? Should I try any of the canon stuff? Should I make a video of my worst picks out of the Expanded Universe? Let me know on any of those questions in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep turning pages.